my soapbox. Let's get to Frankie. Frankie Cartoscelli, KHTK.com. Our Kings guy joins us right now on the Nick Cattle Show on this Monday, Sports 1140 KHTK. Frankie, do you like the Mike Brown hire?
Nick, hello, sir.
Hello.
Good luck to you and your Celtics this afternoon. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for the Mike Brown move. I mean, when you look at the Kings and their history of just the way they've hello?
Yeah. You there, Frankie?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I thought you were cutting out. No, it's the way the Kings have been horrible for the past 16 years, it all comes back to the defense. And when you look at what Mike Brown's going to bring to this team, it's defense. And when you look at all the teams he's had, top 15 defenses, that's a pretty good thing to hang your hat on. So I'm all for the move.
Defense. Out of the final three, when you look at the three finalists, right, when you look at Clifford, Brown, and Jackson, what was your order of preference? How did you rank them, Frankie, the last week or so?
The last week, I mean, obviously you see all the things surrounding Mark Jackson and on the floor and off the floor. And I look at Mike Brown's track record and Steve Clifford's, and those are the two guys that they have experience. And obviously we heard from multiple sources that the Kings were looking to go with a head coach with experience. And Mike Brown's a guy who he's been coaching in the NBA since he was 27 years old. Only 52 now after being around and had some good times in Cleveland and some bad times in Los Angeles. But I definitely was in the Mike Brown camp the past week, and especially when you look at the fact that he's been such a huge part of this Warriors team and their success. He's taken control of their defense this season and really been the voice of this Warriors, that end of the floor. And even just looking at some of the guys that have said things about him, Draymond Green, I saw a quote from him today that said he's the accountability that Mike Brown holds his players to is something that he has not seen in this league before. And that's pretty notable from a guy like Draymond Green, who is a top defensive guy in the league. And sure, the Kings' offense, it's not perfect either. We all know that. Nothing about this team is perfect. But defense, to me, was a priority. And because of Mike Brown, he was the best possibility out there and on that end, and I'm all for it.
KHTK.com's Frankie Cartoscelli with us here on the Nick Cattle Show on this Monday. Of course, you've mentioned it. I've talked a lot about it. Everybody's talking about it. We talk defense with Mike Brown when we mention him. Frankie, do you think they will bring in an offensive mind to this staff to help that side of the floor?
Absolutely. Balance is good. Balance is great. You need balance in the NBA today. And the Kings have been very, very unbalanced. And like I said, the defense has been bottom of the league for the past 3-4 years, and it's been the bottom 10 teams in the league for the past 15, 16 years. So I would imagine they're going to look out there and try to find the right staff to bring in around Mike Brown that's going to have a little bit of everything. And offense is going to be a key aspect as well. But when you start next season with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, I mean, already on paper you have a leg up on the teams you've had of years past as far as having two guys both in the backcourt and front court that can make a difference on a nightly basis. So it'll be interesting to see how this staff comes together and questions around maybe for Doug Christie. Is he a guy that's going to come back? Rico Hines, guys that have been around this organization for the past year or so and that the organization has been very high on. They've been very high on Rico Hines and Doug Christie. The players have been high on those two coaches in particular and Lindsey Harding as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I definitely could see them having an extensive coaching search as far as the rest of the staff to bring in the right guys and get this thing right.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you thought there'd be holdovers from this staff, or could you kind of envision Brown bringing in all of his guys and have an entirely new staff?
Well, one of the things that I heard and other people heard as well is that Mike Brown, it was important to him in this process to be able to select his own staff, and that's something I think that I can't confirm he got the clearance to do so, but I could imagine just based on the fact how things rolled out the last couple of days here, I would imagine he's going to have a say in who comes back and or is signed to this coaching staff. But obviously Doug Christie is a guy who is known around this league, and the players absolutely love Doug Christie this past season. He's been, in my mind, a big upgrade for the young guys, and obviously we know what he brought on the defensive end as a player and the mind he can bring to this team to pair with Mike Brown, who's also a defensive guy. I think he'd be someone that to keep an eye on sticking around. But you know, it's a business, and we've seen this team bring back these players from the early 2000s, and sometimes it doesn't always work out. But I'd like to hope that Doug's an outlier on that end. But it'll be interesting to see how it all plans out.
Frankie Cartoscelli, KHTK.com, is with us. You can check Frankie out on Twitter. Frankie, what is your Twitter handle? Because your name is very difficult.
Oh my goodness, it's F Cartoscelli 3. The last name, just type in Carto and it'll come up. Frankie Carto, it'll come up. I promise you, it's not the best, but it's what I got.
There's just too much going on there. Should people be wary, Frankie, of Brown's record because of who he's coached in the past? I mean, I think a lot of pushback from the people who are criticizing this move or question this move. It's like, well, he coached LeBron, he coached Kobe. Of course, he won a lot of games. Do you think that's a justified take? Do you think that's a reasonable way to look at this?
I mean, it's certainly a take, and you can think that if you'd like. But in my opinion, when you go back and look at those rosters in Cleveland, I don't think that is. LeBron James obviously he's maybe the best basketball player of all time. But when you look at the rest of that roster, and El Galakis was a good player. There's a couple other pieces that are good NBA players. Don't get me wrong, but the way that he brought a team like that to win 66 games, go to the NBA Finals, 60-win seasons multiple times. I think he deserves a little bit of credit. The way he made that team perform on the defensive end, and LeBron James, by the way, he was playing some of the best defense of his career at that point. So if you want to go ahead and say, hey, he's been coaching Kobe and coaching LeBron, and he's been a part of this Warrior staff, that's fine. But, I mean, as far as the things I've read and the accounts I've seen other players describe Mike Brown, their experiences with Mike Brown in the performance on the floor, I don't think that's a very fair assessment. But, I mean, we're going to see what happens here pretty soon in Sacramento.
Frankie, let's talk about Monte McNair because he obviously made this call. This was his decision. Ownership stayed out of his way. They gave him the opportunity to actually do his job and make this choice. I'm looking at the contract, and nobody knows. Nobody has an idea of how long Monty's contract is. And I was reading recently that, if this team doesn't make the playoffs this upcoming year, Mike Brown's first year, that there were going to be some significant changes. And I asked Sam Amick about that last hour, and Sam, he did not put any kind of wet blanket on that. Is it fair to Monte McNair to say if this team doesn't make the playoffs this upcoming season that he should be gone and there should be big changes?
Well, there's a couple parts. I mean, on one end, I think it's really important to have stability. So my thinking is I would not be against the Kings saying, hey, these are our guys. You've given Mike Brown a 4-year contract. We've seen disconnect in the front office and the coaching staff before, as far as even back to when Vivek Ranadive first took over. They hired Michael Malone before they hired a general manager, and then the rest is history before they brought in Pete D'Alessandro. I think that you should stick with the guys that you have. And in 1 year, yeah, this is a very important year coming up. But Monte McNair has rolled the dice. He traded away Tyrese Halliburton, who was under team control for 6-7 years. He brought in Domantas Sabonis to pair with De'Aaron Fox. These are your guys you're going to have for the next 2 seasons at least. And this is your head coach you're going to have for the next 4 seasons, or at least you're going to be paying for the next 4 seasons. And the way the Kings have had a track record of paying head coaches for a year or two after they've been removed from the position, I think it's time to put your eggs in one basket, and that includes general manager, head coach, and your stars. And it's important to me to have that kind of stability because that's one thing the Kings have lacked sorely over this past 16-year drought is stability. So Monte McNair, sure, this is a big year for him. He like I said, he rolled the dice. He made that gamble, and the Kings are going to have to hope it pays off. And Monte will too because of Vivek Ranadive. I have to imagine he's getting a little antsy, and the fact he was able to step back and let Monty make this decision it speaks to his growth as an owner. But that doesn't mean that a year from now, if the Kings are up 28-31 team again, that Monty's going to be getting handed out a contract extension. So it's going to be contingent to me on the way the team plays. But to me, stability is huge, and I'd be for it if they want to extend him.
I agree with you. Got about a minute left here, Frankie. The head coach hire is now out of the way. What are the next couple of things you want to see done here on your to-do list?
Oh, well, get lucky, number one. Week from tomorrow, the balls are going to be hopefully falling in the Kings' favor. The number 7, the team with the 7 best odds has usually jumped the past 4 years, so the Kings will have to get lucky. They need to bring in shooting. I heard you say it earlier in the show. Shooting is important. Defensive players to bring in both depth and starters, and find a power forward. The Kings need a power forward. And, it's a laundry list. There's a lot to do. It'd take more than a minute to kind of dive into everything, but like I said, you can follow me on Twitter. You can read my stuff at KHTK, and I'll see what I can do to get some ideas out there.
Yeah, And that's F Cartoscelli, Cartoscelli.
You spelt it. Nick, that is the first time you ever spelt my name, man.
I'm reading it. I'm reading it off of Twitter. At F Cartoscelli